From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
It's the new Horrorween for 2024.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is your weekly podcast about consumption. We are proud members of the You Run Podcast Network. You can find all of our previous episodes at yourunpodcast.com, as well as all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast, and his name is Sean. And Sean, how the hell are you doing this morning?
I'm a person or thing regarded as useless or unable to cope.
Yeah, me too.
Good.
That's called being an American.
Oh, well, that's the textbook definition of a basket case.
Is that what that is?
That's what it
I
is.
didn't know that.
Now you know.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to know that. Been watching anything other than Basket Case this week?
Oh, were we supposed to watch that?
I've had it on a loop. I've watched it 17 times since yesterday.
That's crazy because I don't think you could fit it in 17 times in 24 hours, but I like that you always go above and beyond.
With all due respect to this film, which we'll get into shortly here, I don't think I could, even if time was not a problem, I don't think I could watch this 17 times in a row. That might be a bit much.
Yeah, I would agree. Probably a bit much. I did watch a few things.
Okay.
Do you want me to start?
Please do.
Okay. Well, I watched a documentary. It's from 2008. You know me. I love documentaries. Called Rock-afire Explosion. And it is a documentary about the Showbiz Pizza Band and the animatronic animals and the ape and the wolf or whatever he is and the chickens and the bear and all that shit. I watched that because I heard it was interesting.
I have
and it
no
was
idea
definitely
what you're talking about right now.
You
but
never
okay.
went to Showbiz Pizza?
I don't think so.
You ever go to Chuck E. Cheese?
I have gone to Chuck E. Cheese.
They have an animatronic band and it plays music. Well, in the 2000s, let me give you a little history lesson. In the 2000s, there was a bit of a revival because some guy got a hold of his own Rock-afire Explosion band, because that's what the band was called, from Showbiz. And
God, this band looks creepier than the Chuck E. Cheese band.
Oh, it's the original band.
Why does she have makeup? She's all
it's a mouse with makeup on. I'll link in the show notes to a YouTube video, but a guy was able to reprogram the band to play modern music. So this documentary kind of followed, because that clip went viral when it happened. And then this documentary follows.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, the beginning of Showbiz Pizza to the band, to the guy who made the band, the inventor of the Rock-afire Explosion. And they go through Showbiz Pizza acquiring Chuck E. Cheese, but then changing their name from Showbiz Pizza to Chuck E. Cheese. And then they changed out all the animatronic band to the Chuck E. Cheese band. So they basically take the skin off these robots. It's messed up. It's interesting, very sad, not because it's like actually sad, but because the way that these people live and they're like dedicated to this animatronic band at Showbiz Pizza, aka Chuck E. Cheese. It was interesting. It was worth a watch. I'd never seen it before, but it was worth a watch.
I love the idea of people being dedicated to the band at Showbiz Pizza and or Chuck E. Cheese. Like that's.
Oh, yeah.
I'm picturing something very close to like a Grateful Dead, like Deadhead. I guess you wouldn't really follow the band around because I would assume they're somewhat stationary, but
you just go to a different location.
Yeah.
I got to see him at all the Chuck E. Cheeses, all the Showbiz Pizzas.
Just getting ripped shit baked and eating shitty pizza while watching a rat that's all hoarded up play music for you. I can get behind that. So
I remember one of the things when I was old enough to drink, one of the things was like, oh, Chuck E. Cheese has beer. Like, I'm not going to go drink fucking beer at Chuck E. Cheese.
So we went to one of my nieces or nephew's birthday party. I can't remember which one now. It's been a while, but I was kind of blown away by the fact that they had alcohol at Chuck E. Cheese and that I was there for long enough. I'm like, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it seems like that's a really bad idea.
Mom and dad getting all loaded on beer while their kids eat shitty pizza.
Right.
Doesn't sound like a bad thing.
Just throw them into the ball pit and hope for the best thing.
Don't drown in there, Timmy.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I watched. The next thing I watched.
You already smell like piss. Jump in the ball pit.
And then I'll piss on you.
Right.
I watched a movie. I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie. It's called Just Before Dawn. It's like an 81, 82 slasher.
Mm-hmm.
It really buys
you're
into
speaking
that.
my language, but I'm not sure.
It buys into that whole like Hicksploitation 80s thing that we had going
really
on for a little bit.
My language now.
Yeah. So it's about a group of hikers. They go up into the mountains, up into the woods, and they get chased by this guy who's let's say, probably developmentally challenged.
He looks like a combination of Darth Vader and Jason Voorhees in the picture I'm looking at right now.
He's definitely challenged, and he has a fat guy goes nutsoid haircut.
Oh,
It's got
well, that's good.
George Kennedy. It's got Christopher Lemon, who is Jack Lemmon's son from The Odd Couple and Cranky Old Men, or whatever that movie series is called. And Greg Henry is in this movie as a young Greg Henry. It wasn't horrible, but it definitely was very stupid, and it had a very stupid and memorable final confrontation. And there's a twist. I don't want to give up what the twist is. If you look at the credits, you will know what the twist is by looking at the characters' names. So don't do that if you want to watch it. It was okay. It was like an hour and a half.
I'm going to go back and watch it now just for Greg Henry.
You should. He's great in this.
You know I love him. So.
Yeah, I know. I've been watching Gilmore Girls, and he's on Gilmore Girls as well. I was sick this past weekend, so I watched a shit ton of stuff. So the last thing I'm going to mention is, I talked about this a while ago. I don't know when it actually came out. I talked about Fallout, the TV show, and how I was watching it. I was about halfway through at that point. I had stopped totally watching it when I talked about it.
Yeah, Walton Goggins in it, right?
Yeah, as the ghoul.
Wasn't that where we had he had too much of a tooth ratio for whatever he was doing?
Yeah, we talked about the gum to tooth ratio, and he's too toothy. He's too toothy for his face. Too toothy
he's
for
too
his
toothy
face.
for my eyeballs, for sure.
Too toothy in space. Anyways, I finished that. I had 4 hours left of that to watch, and my wife actually got into it. So that was in between her running the kids around and me just laying in bed, convalescing. She would sit and be able to watch 20 minutes, and when she would leave and come back, she's like, okay, what happened? Okay, you missed this piece, and blah, 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 blah. So that was entertaining. I mean, I enjoyed the end of the series. I'm looking forward to the next season, which I'm pretty sure they've already announced there will be a season 2.
Oh, yeah. I think they announced that around the time that we were talking about it last. I still haven't given it a try.
You should check it out. I think you might enjoy it. If you're into dystopia.
I almost have to be in the mood for it. I don't usually want it just on a random Saturday afternoon. Maybe if I was sick, I would, but it's kind of one of those things like dystopian, doom future or whatever. Once if it hooks me, then I go, it's like Mad Max. Once I got hooked, I went way off the, deep in the rabbit hole on that one. I did I think it was Fallout 3, and was New Vegas the one that was the spinoff of Fallout 3? I like those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't give Fallout 4 a try.
I did, and I fell off of it, but I fell out of it.
That's some funny shit right there.
That's me.
I don't know. Maybe one of these days I'll get around to it. I've been watching a different show that got put on TV this week, which is why I haven't watched a whole lot of stuff. But
I will say, with Fallout, I should have all watched it at once, because now, when they originally released it on Amazon Prime, I feel like they front loaded 3 or 4 ads, and they wouldn't show any more ads to the end. And now that it's been on for a little bit, for whatever reason, they have regular ad breaks in it, and it kind of sucks, but it is what it is.
I feel like Amazon's kind of the worst for that. I had the ad-supported HBO and a couple other ones. Hulu does this a lot sometimes too. I don't mind when they want to put hey, we're going to put 5 minutes of ads on at the beginning of the movie, and then you're just going to be able to watch the whole movie after that, which is what HBO does a lot and what Amazon used to do. Now that Amazon's making everyone watch advertising unless you pay them up the ass, I feel like they have more ads than Tubi and YouTube combined. If you're watching YouTube with ads, it's every 30 seconds, it feels like they're popping up with something.
It feels like it, yeah.
That's kind of how I felt the last time I tried to watch something on Amazon. And as a result of that, I just haven't really gone back into Amazon, because I've been this is fucking obnoxious. So if there is something on Amazon I want to watch, usually I try to find it through other means.
Yeah, Amazon's usually the also ran for me. It's the last place I even think to check. But they have a bunch of shit on there that I enjoy, and a lot of obscure stuff that I would want to watch. And when I go to it, I see a shitload of stuff that I want to watch, and I bookmark it or add it to my list or whatever. And then I usually promptly forget about it after the thing that I watched is over.
Yeah, I do that too. I know I've found a lot of weird, obscure, music-based documentaries based off stuff that's more the type of shit that I like to listen to. And I always end up being oh yeah, I'm going to go just marathon through a bunch of this, and then, watch one and then fall asleep and forget about them. Who knows if they're even still on there. Catch anything else?
No, that was it for me. I have a bunch of stuff I could talk about, but I don't want to talk for 40 minutes about other shit.
Why not? I only watched one thing, so you can talk as much as you want. Go 40 minutes.
Last week's episode was long enough. I'm good.
Okay, that's good. So I started rewatching the show Detroiters, which just got re-added on Netflix, which I know you're familiar with. For those who aren't, though, if you have watched the show, I think you should leave. That's on Netflix. This very much is like the spiritual, not successor. This was
Prequel.
That show. Yeah, this is the prequel to it, basically. Although it's more scripted, less like random sketch comedy. I don't know. I remember when it was on Comedy Central. I think it was on Comedy Central before, but when it originally aired, I thought it was kind of stupid. Like I found myself falling off of it before the end of the first season. I'm laughing my ass off at it this time around. So I don't know what changed with me or if it was something that just got better and I gave up on it too soon, but I'm finding it to be a lot funnier this time than I did the first time. And you see a lot of familiar places on there, which is always a good thing. It's sad seeing them in the Temple Bar now because there is, it's still technically there, but the front done fell off. So there is no going into the Temple Bar right now. But, we both like hometown shows or hometown movie type things. And that's been kind of nice to watch between football games. So that shit ass school in Ann Arbor lost a game. So I was happy about that.
Is that 2 seasons or is it just 1?
Yeah, there's 2.
Okay.
And the second season, it's funny because you could tell I'm about halfway through the second season now. I feel like I should have been able to rampage through this a little quicker, but I didn't. You can tell there was a lot more effort that went into the writing and trying to craft a story, but it also is getting a little more slapsticky and goofy at times. You can almost see how it's veering into I think you should leave, because just the stuff with what's this, Tim Robinson screaming randomly at stuff for long periods of time, which can be funny. It does drag on a lot more in the second season than it does in the first season.
I like that on that show that they do the being from Detroit, or the area, you see the parodies on commercials that you remember seeing. Basically the premise of the show, if people aren't aware, they're ad execs or they own an ad company and they are making the advertisements. And a lot of the stuff that they show on there plays on old school Detroit television shows or old school local business commercials and shit, like the Devereaux fur is like Dietrich fur and stuff like that. So and Mort Krim shows up, so that's always kind of amusing.
Yeah, Mort Krim's really funny in it. And even the ones that are the bigger, I just watched the I think the last one I watched was the Little Caesars episode. And it's so stupid, but so right on. And it really is yeah, that's about how it feels being around here. I don't know if Little Caesars ads run as much as they do in other parts of the country as they do here. I would assume they do, because are they the biggest national pizza chain, or
they're definitely
they got to be one of
the choice of pizza for the NFL or whatever. I think it used to be Papa John's and now it's Little Caesars. I forget about that when I see the commercials. I think that it's only local, but they're a national company, so it has to be nationwide. I mean, if they can be as prestigious as the pizza of the National Football League, I mean, they must be doing something right.
I do like the new ads with St. Brown screaming at George Kittle. Yeah. Those are kind of fun.
Yeah, I did laugh at those.
I have no argument with that. Honestly, any of the ads they have, because they have 2 or 3 with St. Brown that are pretty good. But yeah, that episode is pretty funny just because, one, it's just kind of funny watching them get broke down and get way butthurt about it. They make that funny. But like I said, I don't know if someone who's not in Michigan sees Little Caesars ads literally every commercial break, let us know, because I feel like that's about how often we see them, is pretty much every commercial break.
All the time.
Yeah, for better or worse. And I know here, I don't think you can, they're about as common as McDonald's around here. You can't go that far without finding Little Caesars, for better or worse. I mean, I don't hate Little Caesars, but it's definitely not my go-to choice for a pizza. Past that, I just been watching football and, dumb shit like that. So I guess I don't really have a whole shit ton to talk about. So
football,
such as life. I have been listening to, we talked about other stuff. I've been listening to, I think I might have brought this up before, and you might dig this, the Disgraceland podcast. Have I brought this up before?
I think you have, and I know of it. I just haven't listened to it.
So if I haven't brought it up before, it's a separate podcast, but and unfortunately it's not on the You Run Podcast Network, but it is still a really well done show. Basically, this guy, I want to say he was in the band Cast Iron Hike. It's an old New York hardcore band, but he basically just does compressed deep dives on dark side stories of primarily the music industry, but he also kind of dabbles in some sport. There's a Mike Tyson episode, there's a OJ Simpson, there's a couple movie-based or film-based or TV-based episodes. So essentially anyone who could be famous enough to have like a disgraceful past, he'll kind of dive into. But I'm learning more about the whole Puff Daddy bullshit because it's more interesting hearing him talk about it than trying to read about it in like redacted clips online or whatever. He did a really good episode about Travis Scott and all the shit that went on with Astroworld recently, which sounds like he's a piece of shit, to say the least. Travis Scott, not the guy who does the show. Yeah, he did. His Halloween episode was on the Cramps, and I love the Cramps, so like that was definitely cool to hear. I'm not going to go through his entire like 200 some odd episodes, but
stay listening to us, please.
If you like listening to stuff, or if you like documentaries and stuff like that, and you want something to listen to, not necessarily watch, this is a good like rabbit hole of a podcast to fall into. He does a really good job of taking what I assume is no budget, because he starts every episode by saying like, I don't have the money to play this song that was popular at this time, like every episode. But you can tell he actually takes the time to research it, put some thought into how he's going to present it, and he does a good job of painting a picture vocally about whatever it is he's talking about. So yeah, I recommend that one.
Unlike this show.
Yeah, we do no research, and we talk about, dong and monsters in baskets.
And ball pits.
And ball pits.
Covered with urine.
We're just setting it up for what you're going to hear after the break. So with that in mind, we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about the movie Basket Case and maybe some more ball pits. Hey, this is John, and I am excited to tell you about another exciting podcast that you can find on the You Run Podcast Network. Do you like spooky stuff? Then check out the Paranormal Misfits podcast. This podcast features your favorite besties diving fearlessly into the paranormal, uncovering mysterious phenomena, unraveling mind-bending conspiracies, and sharing their thoughts on all things horror. Head over to yourunpodcast.com now and check out the Paranormal Misfits podcast, as well as all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. So we're back, and as mentioned, if you just skipped ahead and read the title, we're talking about the movie Basket Case. That's right. This is
Horrorween.
I was getting to that. Calm the fuck down over there.
It's almost over. I'm sad.
So this is the last episode that we're recording of our Horrorween marathon. You'll still hear one more after this, which was already recorded. So see if you can figure out what that might be. But we're talking about the movie Basket Case. This came out in 1982, I believe.
82. Correct.
Look at that. And as per usual, we're going to start with a third-party review. And this one comes from Brad P. And Brad P says, classic Basket Case, 3 out of 5 stars.
He's right. Very true. Classic Basket Case.
Sean, what's this movie about?
Yeah, so for that, we go over to IMDb and we type in words. In this case, we typed in words that say basket case. And this lets us know this gets a 6.1 out of 10 from 22,000 IMDb reviews, ratings, I guess. This movie is down in popularity.
Can I pause you before that?
No.
Sorry. I'm going to do it anyway. I actually found this interesting on here. This movie, we don't usually go on to the tomato meter because
the petometer,
no one cares. Yeah, that too. This movie has got a 54% from the audience, like the non-critics. Somehow from critics, this has a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I was really surprised by that when I pulled it up.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised now that you told me.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Anyways, this movie is dropping in popularity. It's down now to 3589 out of some number, which is down 126 spots from some other time at a different number. And we look at the storyline and the plot. And we look at the one on the top because I'm never quite sure which one's which until I get to the second one, because then it says what it is. This says, a young man carrying a big basket that contains his extremely deformed, formerly conjoined twin brother seeks vengeance on the doctors who separated them against their will. Then we scroll down, and it does say it's a storyline. This comes care of Claudio Carvalho, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
I like Claudio better.
While leaving home, Dr. Julius Liftlander feels something strange on the street and returns home. He locks up in the house, tries to call the police, but is attacked and murdered. In New York City, a man named Dwayne Bradley arrives from Glen Falls and check in the very low-budget Hotel Broslin. He pays the manager, Anthony, in cash and stays in room 7, et cetera, et cetera. Do I need to go on?
No.
I don't like when, I mean, I like seeing the crowdsourced storylines and plots, but this is like a paragraph and I just want a line.
Do you want my cliff notes of this?
Yeah, tell us. What are your cliff notes?
There's a monster in the basket and insanity ensues.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much it.
My cliff notes version says, a pair of separated Siamese twins, Dwayne and Belial, plot revenge against the doctors that were responsible for separating them. That's very similar to the whatever the top one was on IMDb.
Yeah. Well, yours has a little more context. And I think that's good for the movie because at least it shows that they put some thought into it. But at the end of the day, for this movie in particular, and I'm saying this as a positive, realistically, the storyline in this movie, after you know what the storyline is, that's not why you're going back to this movie. You're not going back to see the in-depth story or anything like that. So for me, like, yes, that is accurate and, whatever, but this is very much so the kind of movie that it's fun for a number of reasons I'm sure we'll go over here, but it's one of those, like, you almost have to see it to believe it kind of movies.
And mentioning see it to believe it, this is a Frank Henenlotter joint. We talked about Frankenhooker previously, which was also a Frank Henenlotter joint. Is there anybody that stars in this movie that you recognize other than maybe Dwayne Kevin Van Hettenrick?
I always feel like the hotel manager in his elevator shaft. I always want to call him Mario, but that's definitely not who he is.
No, he's not.
I think it's Beverly Bonner, I believe, is in Frankenhooker as well. She's the only person that I really recognize in here. I actually don't even recognize Kevin, but the main guy, all that much for something other than this movie. And I don't even know if he did, but this is another one of those movies that I know you're fond of, where it's like, this is their only acting credit for a lot of these people. And I think it's Terry Susan Smith was in some like punk band, like I know it's like the Pink Vaginas or some shit like that. I don't know. I heard it over the course of the week leading up to this, but yeah, she's not in anything other than this, I don't believe.
The only thing I recognize Kevin Van Hettenrick from other than this is Brain Damage. And that's another Frank Henenlotter thing that came after this. Can I make an admission to you about this movie? 2 admissions?
Sure can.
I always, for some reason, get this confused with It's Alive, which is a different, I think that's, God, what is that guy's name? The guy that did the stuff. Why can't I not remember his name right now? Anyways, I always get him confused. And my other...
Not Leonard Cohen. That's not right.
Larry Cohen.
Larry Cohen. Leonard Cohen sings
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I made Basket Case.
Close enough.
The other admission I have is that this is my first time seeing this.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm actually a little surprised by that. This seems like it's 100% like up your alley.
I knew what this movie was about, and I've known of its existence, and I've owned, quote unquote, a copy of this movie and many of the sequels for a long time. I've just never sat down and watched it until this viewing. So I was glad that you suggested it for Horrorween.
Well, this one, I should mention, this one's been requested a couple times. I know it was requested by a friend of the show, Pearl, who frequently writes into things and responds to things. So this is a request. It wasn't necessarily a Horrorween specific request, just that we talk about it. I'm sorry if anyone's listening who also requested this. We've had this come up a couple times over the years. So I'm glad that we finally got to sit down and do it. And this is, well, you know what? Let's start with this. Since this is your first watch with it, I haven't seen this movie in years at this point. Well, aside from this week, but I had seen it before. What are some of your first impressions on this one?
I think for this movie, I like that even though you get that real quick summary on IMDb, and again, I didn't read that. I didn't look at the page or anything. I looked at it to see who was in the movie while I was watching it, but I still didn't read that stuff. I like that the movie builds up so far that you really, if you're just like watching it without any background information on it, it takes a while for you to kind of put all the pieces together as to what exactly is happening. I mean, you know that there's something that's killing people and there's doctors and stuff, but they don't really reveal the twins, that they're twins, until maybe like 25, 30 minutes into the movie, which is kind of, it's a little
Feels
bit...
like it might be even longer than that.
It probably is. And I like that it's refreshing because there's so many movies where it's like, this is extremely low budget, right? So let me just get it out of the way. This is an hour and 31 minute movie, $35,000 budget in 1982. Very low budget.
Started as a $12,000, started as 12. And so do you know the story of how we got to 35,000?
No idea.
So not to interrupt you, but I'm going to anyway, apparently. basically he set out with, I think it was 12,000, made a very short like test reel, and then got his money doubled to go on and do it. But this movie, the way that he did it, not only is it a lot of like guerrilla shots, like when he's running Dick out up, 42nd Street, which by the way, this is the movie that we should have tried to get 42nd Street Pete on, because he's on 42nd Street through the majority of this film.
We did talk about this just behind the scenes, just because it never came to light. But
yeah, for those who don't know who 42nd Street Pete is, you're welcome or good for you. Like, don't waste your time, or do. I don't know. He's not very good at technology. Anyway,
he's not a computer guy.
He's not a computer guy, not a tech guy. So basically what happened with this movie, the way that he shot this, and I'm just using round numbers for the sake of it, he'd get like $2,000 together and get whoever he could to come in and show up and shoot $2,000 worth of footage. And he'd be like, I'm out of money. I'll call you when I have money to shoot again. And they go back and fuck off and do whatever they're doing. And they come back like a month or two later and shoot another $1,000 or whatever he had with it. So it was very much so not only a labor of love / like, I just want to make a movie type thing, but it's very endearing to see someone who just wants to make a film to the point where they're kind of piecing it together like that. And according to him, he didn't think it would ever do anything more than be played at one of these like shit theaters on 42nd Street. He thought that was like the goal. And then it kind of eventually found what ended up happening is Joe Bob Briggs found it, and he found because at the time they were putting in theaters with an edited cut, which took out all the blood and presumably some of the other questionable things that happened in this movie. And guess the long and short of it is he showed it at whatever format his drive-in show was on in the 80s. I have no idea. I don't know Joe Bob Briggs that well.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's in Casino and a couple other movies, but he showed it at that. But he would only show it if it was the uncut version with all the shit that we want to see in it. And basically
all the good stuff.
Yeah. Ever since then, it just took off from there. So if you have any love for this movie, you can apparently thank Joe Bob Briggs for making sure that we got to see it.
Well, good for Joe Bob Briggs. I mean, he helps out the little guy, and I appreciate that. But I like
on this one
a few of the things you mentioned. I really like the guerrilla style that he does. You can tell like some of the shots are out of a van door or something that's open with him just walking down the street, and they just drove next to him with a camera. But it's got that grittiness. It captures, it's because it's the 80s. It captures that gritty, like dingy Times Square, New York kind of feel that like something like The Warriors captures. It's not so sanitized or touristy
or Frankenhooker.
Yeah. So but my first impression was I like that the story is, even though it's slow, it's engaging. It still keeps you entertained and keeps you kind of like wanting to know what's going on here. There's a lot of questions that you might have, like right off the bat. If the reputation of this movie didn't precede itself, I probably would have gone into this not knowing much of anything about it and been like blown away about, what I had seen. So I like movies.
Blown away in a good way or in a bad way?
No, I think in a good way.
Okay.
But I like movies like of this era that are showing that gritty kind of New York, urban settings and stuff. So my first impressions were like, this is cool. Where is this going? And how are they going to do the effects of Belial, which I think they only mention his name like once. Otherwise, it's just like monster or something.
My brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's good to hear. So I'm still kind of a little bit in shock that this is your first viewing on this one. Like, again, this just seems so like right up your alley as far as what I would expect for you.
I mean, I've seen Brain Damage, but I didn't see this.
It's good. I don't think I've seen Basket Case 3, if that makes you feel better. I know I've seen 2.
I mean, I didn't feel bad about not seeing this, but yeah, sure, of course. Your misery is my joy, I guess, or whatever.
You mentioned some of the stuff you like, and I agree. I agree with you. I love this like very grimy, like this version of New York, and I know this is just probably 1980 or 1979 New York. It just works so well on film. Like, I love seeing that in pretty much any movie where you get to see, like, I don't know if I want to go as far as say it's the real New York, because I wasn't there. I don't know what the fuck New York was like then. Yeah. If 42nd Street Pete had, shown up for this, he might have told us what the real New York was like. But I like that there's almost an element of perceived danger in this movie. even when there's really nothing going on. Just like him walking up the street, like you almost feel like someone's gonna mug this nerd, or someone's gonna like, fuck this guy up or something. Or really, there's no point throughout this movie where if you take yourself out of it, you know what's going on, and like something's going to happen with this basket and what's inside the basket. I'm going to guess that you had a pretty good idea what was in the basket before you saw it.
Yeah, of course.
But it feels like there's some other shoe that's going to drop like through the whole movie. It does a good job of building that. And for the budget that they had for this movie, or didn't have, maybe more accurately, I already said it once, but just the sheer like fact that this is a labor of love in a movie that was made solely because this guy wanted to make a weird movie, that's hard to beat. Even if and I don't think this is by any stretch like one of the best movies that we've seen. I don't even think it's one of the best movies that we've seen in this Horrorween marathon. But that's a really cool little like piece of this, is that you can really feel that like dude just wanted to make a movie, like as part of how this movie is and how it flows.
And the way the movie's shot, and because it's so low budget, it almost feels like, and I don't mean to sound pretentious when I say this, but it almost feels like the darkness, what you don't see, is like its own character in this movie. Because they like hold back as much as they can on showing Belial, showing him outside of the basket, even showing in the basket. Like I said, it's that opening scene where the guy, the initial doctor, is being kind of terrorized, and he just blankly like fires his gun out into the darkness, like has no idea what's out there, what he's actually even shooting at. They don't even
immediately going, you're a doctor, but you're a dumbass.
Right. You are so stupid. You don't even see the full character then. And when Dwayne's walking down the street, like you said, New York, and the guy's like offering him every drug that probably exists in 1980, and he doesn't stop, you're like, man, this guy, he's going to get stabbed just walking down the street. He could totally get stabbed here.
So we mentioned his name a couple times. Belial, the creature in the box, the other half of Dwayne, which...
What's in the box?
You got to love these parents. They name their kids Dwayne and Belial. It's like modern day celebrities here. How do you feel about Belial? The effects, the persistent, annoying screaming at times. Like it's funny because I'll say this about it. Every time that he opens that box, like he comes out and he's just like constantly screaming, which I probably would be too. It's one of those like bits that it gets old, but then they keep doing it so it becomes funny again. And you start, at least for me, I started laughing at it every time he's like screaming his ass off because it's so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I was really surprised at myself that I didn't get more annoyed, because that's something that Scream is something that other movies, lesser movies, maybe to some extent, would really get on my nerves after a while. The design is really interesting, and I love just some of the things that they do with it, like the stop motion. When I saw the stop motion, I was like, oh, I am totally here for this stop motion fucking stupidity moving around on my screen. When do I get to see more?
And that is Henenlotter's absolute least favorite part of anything that he's done in the history of his film franchise. Like there are full on like 13-minute videos of him complaining about that, like long, like twice as long as a stop animation scene. Just him bitching about how much he hates that scene.
And they do use it very sparingly, and but it's good. It works when they use it. It looks ridiculous and stupid, but it totally works for the movie. So I like the character design. The frozen look of terror on his face is kind of stupidly funny. And yeah, like I said, the screaming normally from some other character would really get on my nerves, but here I'm just kind of like, all right, no, I get it. You're in pain.
Yeah, well, he seems it. I think the biggest thing that throws me off with Belial, and spoilers for this, movie, because I don't know that this really affects the story, but I still to this day never quite understood why his eyes start glowing at the end of the movie. Like all of a sudden he has these like, I guess they're like cat eyes or something, but essentially Belial gets out of this crate several times throughout the course of this movie. And by the end of it, he not only gets out, he's out on the town and he's going to, commit some felonies and cause some shenanigans, as you do. And all of a sudden his eyes start glowing. I think they're red at one point, and I think they turn to orangish yellow at another point. I was like, what the fuck is this all about? Like, I know he's got this like
psychic bond.
Yeah. I was going to say telekinetic or whatever with Dwayne, which, all right, whatever. It doesn't seem like they really like lean into it that much on this, other than to be a like plot device to explain like, got to get back to my chud of a sibling, you know, for lack of better wording. But yeah, the eye thing just really, it's like, why are we introducing this now? Like, what's this doing?
The only thing I could think of with the eye thing is that it's supposed to represent when he's communicating with Dwayne or something, because that's when Dwayne's running down the street naked, you know, and he's not really doing it. Well, in the movie, it's actually filmed that way and he's actually naked. But I feel like that's supposed to be the bond between him thinking like, oh, I'm having this dream. And no, that's actually Belial like on his way to, you know, Flavortown or whatever he's going to be up to as he keeps going along. But yeah, it's kind of like, why are you introducing it with like 10 minutes left, 15 minutes left of this movie?
If that. Because, I mean, once they do that, I mean, it wraps pretty quick. Like, he shows up, they have their little, like, you know, fight, and, you know, shit happens, to put it bluntly. And it's funny, too, because, like, they made 2 more of these movies, and they clearly ended this movie with no intention of making a sequel. At least it didn't seem like it.
Yeah, seems very
Final.
Yes, has a very final kind of feel to the ending here. I got to say, every time that basket opens up, one of my favorite scenes, or my favorite thing that happens, maybe not favorite scene, is when Dwayne takes Belial in the basket to the movie theater. He falls asleep. That like punk guy comes and takes him in the bathroom. And I didn't really put 2 and 2 together until this actually happened. Like, on a wicker basket, why would you put like a lock, a metal lock on it when the guy just kicks it off? He just stomps it off. And then every time that basket opens, I don't know. I mean, I know what's in there, obviously, but I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know when he's going to jump out and scare you or do the little jump scare. And it freaked me out. Every time I saw that stupid basket open, I was like, oh no, I know he's going to pop out of there. I know he's going to scream. But when is he going to do it, and at what point? And how am I going to get freaked out this time?
I also like that I'm never 100% sure what he's doing that actually kills people. Like, it looks like he's just kind of like manhandling and like kind of
smearing blood on their faces.
Yeah, and like smacking them around a little bit, but it never looks like he's doing anything too, like, you know, intense.
Lethal.
I mean, I guess in the last scene, he, like the girlfriend scene, I guess he kind of is, because he's like in a pool of goo. But I'm also never 100% sure. I'm like, is that his goo or her goo? Like, what is actually supposed to be? Like, I know what's implied.
Yeah, what am I looking at here?
Right, but that's a lot of like, what am I seeing happening in this particular scene? So I always like that, because this only has like, it's got like less than 10 people that actually die in this movie, but they're all pretty messy. And they all leave me like, what actually was supposed to happen in this scene? Does he just get out and like bitch slap people to death? Or does he actually have some, like, I don't know. They all seem to look like they end up on the ass end of a fight with a large cat.
Yeah, I was going to say cat scratch fever. They all get cat scratch fever and get some gouges on their face, and then they're just on the ground and expired.
Do you have any opinion on Dwayne? Because he is the, I guess, lead of this movie other than Belial.
I mean, I really don't have much of an opinion on him, because he's got his own little...
I feel like he's just kind of there.
Yeah, he's got his own little journey that he's going on. He's helping Belial. They're trying to get down to taking out these doctors that separated them. And they have this whole extended scene when they were younger, and how the dad was like disappointed or not disappointed, he was heartbroken or whatever, that his wife was killed by the birth of this thing. And the aunt is the one that's kind of wanted to take any kind of interest or any kind of care or teaching of Dwayne and Belial. And then like, yeah, we got to get these guys separated. And from there, it's kind of like, no, he's there to tell the story of what they're doing. And he's there to do the investigation piece, because obviously the other guy can't do anything, because every time he's on screen, he just goes, "Rawr!" And, you know, that's like his role in it. So he's like the audience surrogate or something, trying to unravel the mystery, but it's not really that much of a mystery. Like, you already know what you need to know as an audience. He's just tracking them all down. Yeah, I would say for me, I feel like Dwayne is normally the kind of character that I would be very annoyed with. Like, he's very borderline innocent in a way, like, aside from wanting to kill these doctors. But like, there's something endearing about him. Like, he's obviously cares about his brother for whatever reason. You can see him like realizing through this movie that his, no pun intended, his attachment with his brother is creating a bigger problem in him being able to actually live a life that anyone would want to do. But at the same time, like, he's kind of a fucking goober. I do like when like one of the times that Belial comes out and he goes back to the hotel and he's just like bashing the like
basket into every wall that he can find as he goes running up the stairs. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, that's good.
But for the most part, like Dwayne's, if this were pretty much any other movie, I'd be like, God, who is this like goody, like douchebag guy that just needs to like, well, Al just needs to fuck him up. And I guess he does, but like, sooner than later, please.
Yeah, you kind of feel sorry in a way for Dwayne because, like you said, he's just trying to live his life and he wants to get out and see stuff, but he feels like service or whatever to his brother and getting all that stuff taken care of. So you kind of feel sorry for him, but at the same time, he's a bit of a dork.
But to say, lightly. I do think it's funny too. Like he kind of almost gets laid a couple times in this movie, and
he has the opportunity.
That scar that's on like half of his body, I'm going to put it out there. I think if some chick's hugging up on him, I think you're going to feel that through a t-shirt. I don't think you're going to be able to hide that as well as they do in this movie. And I don't know.
It's a little chunky.
I would have liked to have seen a response to like his whole, shit stain looking like scar that's on the side of his body. Like that could have been a fun scene, but we didn't get that. So that's fine. So do you have anything you want to add with this? I mean, like I said, this movie, although it's a lot of fun, it's fairly straightforward.
It is. Yeah.
It's not, I wouldn't call it emotionally deep or anything like that.
No, I think the only thing I'd really wanted to add is that all the performances are kind of just like generally piss poor, but it totally works for the movie. And I think the one standout for me is Beverly Bonner's performance in the movie. Clearly, she's not like a classically trained actress or anything, but she's the good type of bad that I like. And she kind of like lights up the screen. I know that sounds really, again, pretentious, but all the scenes that she's in are kind of like these highlights almost because she just has this personality that pops off the screen. You can tell that her character is trying really hard to like attach herself to Dwayne in a way to like have him open up and become friendly with him. Not so much like sexually friendly, even though she's a hooker or call girl, escort or whatever she is. But she just tries to get Dwayne to step outside his comfort zone and have a little fun. And her performance is just kind of, like I said, it's not good, but it's like probably one of the better performances in the movie other than maybe the love interest of Sharon. Like Sharon's decent too. Her wig was a little distracting to me though, I think. I mean, I know the reason why she wore it, but it's just kind of...
Yeah, I almost feel like why even bother with, like, I understand why. I'm sure they wanted like a specific look, but I don't feel like it would have made a difference if they just let her look the way that she looks.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Much like Belial chopping down on like 8 hot dogs at once and making some slurping noises, I got to say, what time is it?
Then you're in for a big treat, bro. Because it's hot dog time.
We are getting down to brass tacks this time. We are just jumping in. We're like, no nonsense. Let's talk about this shit.
Yeah. We don't have time for this shit like we did last week where we had to go through 5 fucking stories plus a prologue. And
I'm on my deathbed right now, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we want you to survive Halloween. You want to go first or you want me to go first?
I can go first. I was going to say, much like the last Henenlotter movie we talked about, which was Frankenhooker, he does a whole lot with a whole little, and he does it with whatever bizarro story it feels like you or me or he can think of. This is his first like real full-length movie. And like you said, it was all kind of guerrilla style, super low budget and just filming it as he went. And I don't know. I think that even with how laughable Belial as a creature is, he's still very menacing and very freaky and just not something I would ever want to see, number one, in a dark alley and never in real life. And God damn it, that Henenlotter, he did it again. For me, I got to give Basket Case 7.5 deformed twins out of 11 hot dogs. I really enjoyed it. This is the first time I'd seen it, which surprising to me as much as it's surprising to you. I just really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun watching this. It was a really quick and easy hour and a half.
I guess that means it's my turn, huh?
Whose hot dog is this? Huh? Is it yours?
So I'm right there with you. I mean, this wasn't a first watch for me, but again, it's been a while. So it felt kind of refreshing to go back to it. And I did kind of forget some of the stuff that was in there. Not necessarily story related, but some of the little stuff like, oh, this is not just like there's a specific location here. Like you're looking at 42nd Street. You're looking at this district, which has tons of stories that have come out of it over the years. So I find that to be pretty cool. The performances in it, they're the kind of performances that you get out of this kind of movie, and I'm here for it. Like they're not going to win any Oscars. They're a far cry from like, God, what was that fucking... It's not like The Occultist where they just literally like pulled people off. Like these people have at least read a line before. I'm not going to say they went to acting school, but they're a little better than some of the shit like that we've talked about. the people that are on the screen outside of Wild, they're all memorable enough. Like, again, just like, oh, you got Mario, you got, like you said, Casey, the hooker, Sharon, and Dwayne. They all are, they serve their purpose, and they actually do a pretty good job of conveying a story in a movie that I think if anyone else had made this movie, there would be absolutely zero attempt at telling a story here with it. I think it would just be an hour to an hour and a half of like, let's see how much shit we can get this little bastard into and, you know, make it a slot fest, which could have been fine in its own right. But the fact that there is a story attached to this, regardless of how much I do or don't care about it by the time I, you know, get around to the second watching, that actually kind of sets this apart from a lot of other, I don't know if you want to call this a grindhouse movie or like a B movie or, you know, whatever from this era. It has more like heart to it than a lot of the movies of this era do. So I'm kind of right in lockstep with you. It's a solid 7.5, like slimy, warm, unheated up hot dogs being slid down a amputated brother's throat.
Yum.
Yeah. It's fun, and it is, unless you just don't like, you know, gross out horror movies, this is absolutely a movie that you should throw in at some point because it's worth checking out. And apparently not everyone's seen this movie.
Yeah. I don't even think it's on the level of like gross out. I mean, there are some gross things, but it was refreshed. I was kind of like, oh, I was expecting it to be a lot grosser, and its kind of reputation preceding itself a little bit more than actually.
I think that depends on what your level
your
of
threshold.
gross out movie is. Like, I think you and or I have a much higher level of like, you're going to have to try harder to gross us out than, you know, what this did.
Very true. Good point.
Which might come up in the responses to the question of the week. So just a little foreshadowing because I read the answers. Speaking of question of the week, so we're moving right along. Again, we're at warp speed this week. And the question of this week is, what is a horror movie with the strangest plot? Preferably one that you've watched. I don't even know what the picture is that I use this week, which is good because no one answered the picture as far as I know.
Good.
Yeah. So we're going to start over on X, Twitter, whatever it is. And we're going to start with our friend BP, who you might be hearing more of before the end of the month. And BP says, the movie Rubber is pretty strange. A killer tire with psychotronic powers that in a film that keeps breaking the fourth wall. I think I am one of two people in the world that like this movie. I actually know the other person. It's a fun movie unless it's not for you, but you're wrong. Rubber is a fun movie, and I would kind of piggyback on that. We watched that one of the director's other movies, Deerskin, also a strange movie, but pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, not bad.
Piggybacking on BP is Your Movie Creep podcast, which is at Your MC podcast, says, add me to the team. Rubber is very fun. And BP says, yay, we're up to 3 people. Well, you're up to at least like 5. Give yourself.
I didn't weigh in, but I enjoyed Rubber as well.
I haven't seen that in like since it came out.
Yeah, it's been a while for me.
As soon as I saw like it's a tire that kills people, I was like,
I'm in.
Okay. Yeah. See how this stuff.
Where do I watch this movie?
Right. So we're going to switch over to Instagram, which is where we have other responses. And at FTH Horror Show says, Kuso. I don't know what that is. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Kuso?
Mm-mm. Sounds Asian.
It does. I'm going to write that down and take a look into that. And then Hass Luke says, Tammy and the T-Rex. I don't know if I would call that a horror movie, but it is a strange movie for sure. I know I've talked to you about that one. Have you actually seen that?
I haven't. Like, I know about it and I know of it, but no, I haven't seen it.
It's definitely like crummy movie March type material, in my opinion.
Kuso is not an Asian movie. It's directed by Flying Lotus, who is a musician. George Clinton's in it.
I'm equally confused and intrigued. George Clinton, like Funkadelic George Clinton?
Yeah. Events unfold after a devastating earthquake in Los Angeles in 2017.
Swell of Hannibal Buress?
Yes. At least that's what I'm seeing here.
I don't know if that makes me more or less. It's a very interesting cover. Okay, well, instead of me Googling things and expecting you to listen to that, let's finish these other replies to our question of the week.
Thank you.
So over on Instagram at Pretty Killer Podcast, Jordana, our good friend, says 100% The Greasy Strangler. You've been threatened with this movie once, and she's right. It is a strange fucking movie, and we'll get around to it eventually. Let's see. So this one also sounds like it's probably up our alley. And I know what the cover of this one is, and I still haven't watched it. But Peanut Cole says The Scrotum. And then Sam over at Feature Creatures DTF says Bad Milo is up there. He's right. Bad Milo is a very strange fucking movie. You're looking confused. Have you not seen Bad Milo?
I have not.
It's about a turd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sold.
Yeah, right. Where do I want this? Oh, Ken Marino from The State.
So, speaking of the person who recommended that we watch Basket Case, XX Pearly XX says, easy, Necromantics 2, or the title I would have gave it, which is Shut Up While I Zip Up This Murder Boner, I Love You. Yeah, those movies are.
Have you seen Necromantic?
I've seen enough of it.
Oh, okay. Enough said.
Last and certainly not least, our friend Justin over at Pop Culture Reflections Podcast, another amazing member on the E-Run Podcast Network, says, I'm thinking either the movie Pin or the movie Basket Case. It's the only person who picked the title this week.
Wow. Pick the title, win a prize. I don't know what the prize is, but you've won it. Congrats.
We'll figure that out. Sean, do you have any movies that fit the bill of whatever we said? Strange movies for answering this question of
Strange
which we've been
movies
talking
for
about?
strange people. I think for me, one of the strangest horror movies, I think it's a horror movie, is Climax. And I don't 100% remember what the movie's about, so I have to go to IMDb. And the description, storyline, plot, whatever's at the top says, French dancers gather in a remote, empty school building to rehearse on a wintry night. The all-night celebration morphs into a hallucinatory nightmare when they learn their sangria is laced with LSD. And I want to say that like people start hallucinating, so you don't know in the movie like what is actually real and what is a hallucination by these characters. And I feel like people end up murdering each other and all this other crazy shit. It's a lot of dancing.
Sounds off-putting.
Yeah, I feel like French movies, like in my opinion, the French movies that I've seen have been ones that other people have like, oh, let's go see this movie. And another one, I think it's called Fat Girl, and it's a French movie. I think it ends up being a horror movie. And spoilers if this sounds interesting to you, but this movie is about these two sisters that go on vacation with their parents, and the dad has to go home early, like on holiday or whatever. And I think it's a 2-week holiday. And the older sister is like attractive, and the younger one's kind of, in her awkward stage. And the older sister gets involved with some Spanish dude or something. And I remember full frontal nudity in that movie. And the younger sister tries to fit in and do stuff that her older sister does. And the end of the movie, they're like, okay, it's time to go home. And all this romantic shit that they did, that the older sister got involved with this kid, it's just the movie. And then at the end, they're driving home. They stop at a rest area or something. And this crazy guy with an axe like kills everybody except for the girl, the fat younger sister. And it was like really shocking. I don't know if that's considered a horror movie or not, but it was like, how strange that this whole movie has this whole story and the end just has this like real quick one-off thing. And it's been years since I've seen it. So pardon me if my memory isn't 100%, but that was really kind of strange for a thriller, horror, romance, coming of age kind of film.
I'm going to go with the movie Spookies.
I remember absolutely nothing about that movie. Why don't you tell us? What's it about?
I'm not really going with that. It's bad. No, if I was going to say something, I don't know if this would fall more into just like a movie that grossed me out or if it's actually a strange plot. And they made 3 of them. And I feel like they got stranger as I went. I thought the Human Centipede was fucking like a bizarre concept that just got pushed way, way farther than I expected them to, and got worse and worse and worse. And it's still a movie. Scott and Merck over at You Run Podcast did an episode on it maybe a month or so ago. And I thought I had kind of gotten past how grossed out I was by that movie. And as soon as I started talking about it, I'm like, no, I'm still grossed out by this. I don't really, I'm going to finish listening to it, but I don't know that I need to relive. Yeah, I don't know that I need to relive this fucked up, stupid movie. So that's my answer. Followed closely by Spookies, which is looking at it, a story about a wicked sorcerer that tries to sacrifice a group of people inside his house with the intention of using their vitality to keep his wife alive. I don't remember that being what happened, but okay.
I remember a lot of driving and a guy that looked like Dracula or something.
Yeah. Sobriety was not happening when that movie was on, so I can only remember so much. I think that's all we got. We're going to start wrapping up on Horrorween, or are we? Maybe, well, we're not going to be watching any more Horrorween movies until next Horrorween, but I'm sure we'll bring up horror while before that, like maybe in 3-4 weeks, something like that. Anyway, in the meantime, if you like this show, you can tell us why. That would be kind of cool. One way you can do that, you can check out our site, which is crap.town. There's an option for feedback on there right near the top of the page. You can send us messages on there. If there's a movie that you want us to watch, whether it's for Horrorween or otherwise, you can send us requests through there. You can also do that on our social medias. We're at Dewey Pod Monster all over the place, whatever social media it is. If you search Dewey Pod Monster, you're going to find us. Pretty simple. And of course, you can check out all of our previous episodes and all of our upcoming episodes at yourunpodcast.com. While you're there, please make sure to check out the other awesome members of the You Run Podcast Network as well. Sean, what else is going on? What have I not said?
If you want your question of the week answer read on the show, leave us an answer to our question of the week. We post it on social media. That's at Dewey Pod Monster.
God damn it.
If you're interested in any of the stuff we talked about during the show, it's all linked in the show notes. Some of those links are affiliate links, specifically the Amazon links. If you click those links, you buy something, you pay for the movie that we talk about. We earn like $1 or $2 for every 50 gazillion dollars that you spend on Amazon, because that's just the way this economy works these days. And other than that, if you are interested in my Michigan craft beer content, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com or on all social media networks at Draft Therapy. Check it out.
We have a YouTube channel too. I forgot about that.
We do.
Occasionally we put stuff on there.
It's in the show notes.
It is in the show notes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all we got. Happy Horrorween. We'll be back next week with something that I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll be back next week. That's it.
I thought you said ball bits. Some ball bits.
Bits, pits, shits, whatever.
Tits.
Sure, someone's shit in a ball pit plenty of time. Tits.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
People live on shit in ball pits.
yeah, it's all fucking wonderful.